Hello, everyone. Today I'm talking about The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. So right off the bat, I think I would have to rank this as my second favorite Zelda game of all time, besides Ocarina. And I think it's very funny because when this game was coming out or advertised, I thought there's absolutely no way that was the case. For those of you not aware, the controversial-ish history of The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker was that fans had Ocarina of Time, they had Majora's Mask, and other games. Now graphics were getting better, games are getting more serious. You had serious stories like Final Fantasy VII being played, and in general, other games were coming more mature and more not exactly mature as an R rated, but in terms of they were more serious looking with their storytelling aesthetic. And so people are like, oh, cool, what's Zelda going to like? Serious Zelda. And, next gen Zelda with actual 3D graphics that aren't just pixelated. They can actually make proper models now. And, people looked at Ocarina of Time, and everyone, because of the actual pixel graphics in Ocarina of Time, it acted as a impetus for interpolation. And what that basically is mentally, this is a bunch of pixels, but because it's kind of abstract, you interpret it as something more dynamic in your brain, which I find really, really an interesting phenomena overall. That being said, however, the direction they decided to take, even before that, so at Space World 2000 roughly, they were doing a GameCube demo where it showed off the graphical capabilities of the GameCube, and they had this amazing fight between Link and Ganondorf now had a sword, and it was a fanboy's dream. It was the coolest thing in a collection of other things they were doing for tech demos, and they thought, next gen Zelda is gonna be sick. It's going to be insane. It's going to have real life graphics, and it's going to look really, really cool. And then instead, 2003 comes around, and we get this. We get The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, where you play as a little cartoon chibi Link. And pretty much everyone in the West hated it. It was like, what is this? We were promised epic Lord of the Rings-esque fights, and the scale of combat and whatever that was going to be insane, and instead we get a cartoon that looks like it's made for kids when Zelda is the most mature, interesting, and perhaps advanced intellectually IP out there, and Nintendo gives us this, and we all felt kind of betrayed. And I have to say that, fortunately, that really is not the case. Wind Waker is actually an incredibly well-made game, an amazing story, and probably, like I said, my second favorite Zelda outside Ocarina. And it was a very kind of pleasant surprise. And it's very funny because, of course, Zelda's always sold more, apparently, in the West than in Japan. And so when they got that feedback after this game, they made Twilight Princess, which looked the part, but didn't play the part. If we had a game that looked like Twilight Princess and actually played like Wind Waker, it would have been amazing and perfect. But unfortunately, we have a little bit of a mixed bag. And honestly, the Wind Waker art style has really grown on me over the years. It's now seemingly difficult for games to even have a decent aesthetic and a cute aesthetic for even simple things like this. I also probably played the most. This is Zelda I probably played the most because of the time it came out, and because I was obsessed with getting all of the little pictures and little clay things that you get when you do that. It was like the very early version of the Sheikah Slate, basically, and the compendium. But yeah, that's a little bit of a preamble for what the expectations for this game were, and going into them and how they kind of failed and spectacularly, until people shut up and play the game and realize, oh, this is actually really, really good. So Coming from Majora's Mask again, Zelda is just it's going really hard. They're like, hey, we want to do like a chibi, cell shaded art style thing where it's all based around pirates. We're all pirate themed. Yeah, Zelda was doing it first. So it's all pirate themed and ocean themed, and basically you would sail the open seas. So a really interesting turn in the whole philosophy of the game series. Rather, there's one part that's pirate themed, but it's all mainly ocean themed. It's all very based around exploration on the open seas, and basically land masses are much smaller now. So while in Hyrule you had a whole field and world to explore, you basically only have a few islands that you can actually go to and kind of find things on it. Also, this game is implied to take place in the far, far future of the timeline of the universe, as you have the disappearance of Zoras and Gorons and other races. And the Kokiris and the Zora apparently have adapted. So now you have different kind of races like the Rito tribe and the Koroks, who reside on an island. And so it's interesting how basically all these things have evolved and changed over apparently millennia. And basically what's happened, there's been this huge flood, this deluge. This whole, world of Hyrule has been basically sunk. And so it's a very interesting, very different gameplay design and philosophy. So not only do we have a totally different aesthetic, there are some elements from the previous games that come in. So you basically sail to an island and you basically can explore it and find out stuff. And again, I think in this game, there are 3 major kind of dungeons. And then after that, only 2. So there's only 5 dungeons in this game, which is kind of shocking. But at least there's more than Majora's Mask, and they're a little bit more memorable, I guess. They're kind of focusing more so on the world itself, but kind of getting away from the whole dungeon aspect of Zelda as the games go on, which is kind of interesting to me. Also, it's funny that I have to just point out that the Goofy Pirates theme in this game is the same that plays for Groose in Skyward Sword, what I just think is the funniest little consistency between these games, which is very cool. They also have other things too. So your sailboat in this game is very very interesting. Basically you can use it to sail around, but you can also use certain objects on it. They transform. So if you use a hook shot on the boat, you can basically search for hidden treasure. If you put a bomb on it, it turns into a cannon on a ship, like a pirate ship. And your boat is super agile, can jump over things. There's little submarines for you to find in the world, little islands and archipelagos to explore. And so it's kind of an interesting experience where less is more really is the case, because there's not all this land everywhere. When something does stand out, it's meant for you to explore it 100%. So it's not like I guess you could call it an issue in the previous Zelda games where there would just be a bunch of empty space that just serves no purpose. But every surface in this area serves a purpose. So yeah, what is the setup to this game in terms of story? And it's much more, I guess, straightforward in the opening. Again, it goes at a good pace for the plot. Essentially, Link lives on this island with his little sister and his grandmother, so that's a very interesting start to a game. And so basically, Link's sister is kidnapped by this giant bird when pirates attack or go to the island looking for supplies. And Link basically sets off with them on an adventure to go save his sister, and also, he gets wrapped in something much larger than himself. And essentially, he ends up having to go out and search for the equivalent of the spiritual stones throughout the land of Hyrule, and basically, have the power to fight. Not a huge spoiler, but the King of Darkness has returned, and you need to be able to defeat him. And so it becomes, from saving his sister to saving the whole bloody world once again. You will have new mechanics. Sometimes characters will actually join you in dungeons, and some of the dungeons require a bunch of co-op play. It's very much similar to Princess Ruto and Jabu Jabu's Belly, but on a much larger scale. Like, you will need them for everything, and that aspect is really, really interesting. And again, there's an epic story to be told here. The history of the sages, the people, and the overall story of what happened to Hyrule is really, really interesting. But it is very different. But I think it's cool that this direction that they've taken it in. And eventually, Wind Waker did grow on me, despite initially really disliking the art style. It's a lot of fun. It's very nice. And so, you kind of get started, and the corner of the map where the big bad enemy base is kind of meant to be almost unbeatable. And it's only till once you have all these items and all the special things, you can finally go there and fight the big bad guy. The midpoint of this game is interesting. It takes a big twist and a big turn as to what the objective is, and who certain characters become. There is a Princess Zelda in this game, and it's interesting to see how they handle that. Similar kind of to Ocarina, I would say, in its execution. The end of this game is also really, frankly, shockingly epic. It really is on par with the final boss fight of Ocarina, which I just never thought could be possible. But Ocarina is still better, but this still comes pretty damn close. Also, the dialogue in some of the game and some parts of this game is really, frankly, impressive and very, very interesting. A lot of the generic characters and the antagonists and the reoccurring side characters are much more interesting, and just have more interesting writing in general, even when it's so short. Some other new side characters, we actually have Tingle return, and Tingle actually plays a semi-major role in the main story, if you can believe it. Essentially, there's this one arc of the story where you need to do this massive treasure hunt officially to finish the main quest of the game, and he is the map maker, of course. This game also introduces the new character of Beetle, who is the main merchant, I guess, in Zelda games now. There are a couple other characters who are the gods presiding over different areas of the map. There is also the new companions who act as the descendants of the sages. And it's really interesting because that whole Rito Zora connection and Korok Kokiri connection is very explicit and not fan theory at all, because their ancestors look completely different from them. In terms of music, I would say also Wind Waker has amazing music. Very, I would say, dissimilar from Majora's Mask, where it was more creepy and weird and roundabout and kind of dissonant, honestly, sometimes, at least tonally. It wanted to make you feel weird. This game is more traditional, triumphant, and outgoing, and optimistic. I would say you would call it. And I find that's interesting. Maybe that's why Twilight Princess comes off as so odd and strange, because it's the odd one out or something. Some new mechanics in this game. You now have, besides the sailboat, you also have rope jumping mechanics are also very big. How they deal with ropes and their, I guess, movement, and how you swing from each one to another one. Another big mechanic, or another cool mechanic, I'm not sure if this was in the old Zelda games, but Link will now, because he has a more animated art style, his eyes are super large, so he will now actually look around the room, and he will actually look at either, the puzzle thing or a treasure chest or something like that. That's something I found out on my own that I thought was really, really cool. The dungeons are also very interesting in this game, very well developed. You get very good items. The art style, I know things like the boomerang just fit the art style of this game. It's a big, chunky, cartoonish kind of thing. that I love using. Even when you lock onto things, it makes a big yellow kind of symbol over the enemy's head. You have some classic Zelda enemies return, like the choo-choos. Also, the fairies have gone through a redesign in this game, and the great fairies actually resemble more so I'm not sure if I want to say Indian deities, but they do have like 4 or 6 arms in some cases. And the fairies themselves look like these little, I don't know, like little, more so like angel statues more than anything. It's also a different mechanic. You also have a telescope. There's a lot more interesting things in this game, but fundamentally it's still kind of working off the same thing. B is tied to sword, A is your action button, and you have 3 buttons for your items. What is also very cool about this game is the map, and like I was saying in the previous games, the menu really fit the vibe of this game. It also fits this game as well in terms of vibe, but it's also kind of flat and not really interesting. But the map is actually really cool. It's like a proper like treasure hunting, pirate map where everything is essentially, well, it's initially it's blank, and it's only as you slowly fill out the map that you mark out certain treasure spots and things like that. And treasure hunting in this game is basically you'll see actually a beam of light or a flock of seagulls around something, and you basically just plant your crane in there, and it basically you pull up a sunken treasure chest and open it up, and you either find a heart piece or a rupee and something like that. Also, I should talk about those encounters. They have these giant kind of mini bosses where if you see a bunch of seagulls circling around this one area in the ocean, do not sail toward it unless you're ready for a huge boss battle. Because this giant squid basically will take you on. Also, I can't help but think that around the same time this game came out, a few years prior, they had Pirates of the Caribbean. I just can't help but think that is a similar influence in why they decided to go with this kind of aesthetic and theme, which I think is really, really cool. Another nice new mechanic actually in this game is that the GameCube had 2 sticks essentially. And so the C stick, which is a smaller one in this game, is used to be your controlling camera, look around your environment. So that's kind of new for Zelda. You still have the lock-on. It's mapped to L now for the L trigger. So it's interesting to see Nintendo and Zelda also adapt with the times and see where it goes. Again, there's just really funny, cartoony things in this game. Like, at one point, you get this giant hammer, which is like way bigger than Link. And if you hit an enemy, it'll like smush them like almost like a cartoon. But then you'll like get the heart and everything. So it's very like a non-serious, lighthearted game. And honestly, it's almost better for that because of it. There are also a lot of very funny mini quests and side quests, like the Battleship-esque game. Actually, one of my favorite side quests is that one of the main islands you go to, Outset Island, there is a rich girl and a poor girl, and over the course of the quest, they essentially trade places, and I find that to be really funny. So the big, arrogant rich girl ends up, becoming nothing but, going to rags, and she becomes really, really humbled, and it's really funny. Kind of experience and exchange. What I also liked about Windfall Island is that, Windfall Island. Outside Island is where you start, but Windfall Island is where, well, there's a giant windmill and all these people are. The main hub world, if you will. And also on this island, you have this weird kind of decorating minigame where there's a bunch of what I would call, I guess, trophy stands. And, each one of these stands, you can basically put a different kind of trophy or statue in it, rather. And you kind of can decorate the town. And it's funny because each of these things, it kind of, they're in a set place. You can't put anything there. But you have a choice of maybe 20 different statues to put wherever with different costs and prices. And I honestly really, really enjoyed that. I mean, there's always games that have you customize different aspects of your clothing or your ship or maybe part of your environment. But I thought it was so interesting that it was a completely customizable part of the environment that was, how would I say, scoped down enough so that it wasn't super onerous and how would I say, like there wasn't too much because everything was built on one little area, that it allowed you to basically say, whoa, I can optimize this. It would take me a couple hours and whatever, but I won't spend days on this. I can find my own way to express myself in this. And I don't know, I really enjoyed that. It's also funny. Again, Zelda's always been a compendium of different types of gameplay styles, which I love and adore. So even in the first, beginning level, you actually lose your sword once you get to the main fortress, and you have this stealth section. And it's this very funny thing, honestly, where Link has to essentially wear these barrels and sneak around like it's Metal Gear Solid, which I thought was so funny. I don't know if Kojima saw that and decided to integrate that in Metal Gear Solid 4, but I think it's so funny that that's just the case. Another really cool thing I have to mention about this game that I absolutely love, that I don't think came back until Breath of the Wild, is that when you defeat an enemy and they drop their weapon, you can actually pick it up and use it, which I just think is the coolest thing. And the enemy weapons in Wind Waker are super, super cool. You have these giant spears or halberds with little, things on them. You also have things like later in the game, these giant skeleton warriors with gigantic like undead blades that you can just pick up that are like 5 times Link's size. It's so much fun to just pick those up and have fun with them. I really wish they could bring it back. Well, they have brought it back in a way, but when you can make like a series of crazy, insane weapons in Breath of the Wild, there's really no point in comparing it, I suppose. What's also new about this game is not only the aesthetics, but obviously the sound effect design. The sound effects are kind of more cartoony, obviously, but honestly, they just suit the tone of the game better and the games in general. I really do enjoy it. It's very cute, very fun, and very friendly and well designed. Oh, I forgot to talk about the main point of the game, the Wind Waker itself. What is the Wind Waker? So when you get to the first major dungeon, basically, or right before that, you are bequeathed an item called the Wind Waker from kind of the gods of the land for your safekeeping. And what the Wind Waker does, it's a weird, basically it's a conducting rod, and instead of being an instrument like the ocarina you play, it kind of makes a sound on its own via the wind, and you can actually change it from like 3/4 to 4/4 and like 6/4 time, and depending on the kind of song you need to play. And once you play that song literally on the wind and you conduct the wind to make music, you can choose essentially what direction the wind to go. And so that's why this Zelda, or rather this Link, is called the Hero of the Wind, because he uses the wind essentially to point the direction and fill the sails of his ship so he can sail around. The Wind Waker is also used to conduct different melodies that can teleport you and activate different things and different objects in dungeons. And again, even the open world and overworld sound for when you're going around the world in your boat is very, very cool, very good. It's funny, I just kind of realized there's also Gerudo Jail in Majora's Mask. I think Link gets thrown in jail every single game he's in, which I think is really funny. Part of this game is also sort of the Odyssean kind of storytelling tropes where, each little island is its own sort of micro story or micronation. There are little islands that will have, maybe like a hidden boss fight, or they might have, like a special, house of horrors. There's, a haunted island. There's like a frozen island. There's a fire island. They take all those elements and they just put it in a very scoped and focused area, which is honestly is very smart of them. And the ocean itself is not that far apart, so you can always travel reasonably well before you find another island to go to, as well as things like I said in between the other points of the island, such as submarines, monsters, and treasure chests. Probably my favorite mechanic from this game was the Korok leaf. You can use it to float through the air. It took magic for some reason, but I thought it was really cool that it allowed you to do that. And that eventually you would see the evolution of that into, eventually Breath of the Wild as the glider, which I think is really cool. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I absolutely adore this game. It has became my second favorite Zelda, and I really thought that I would not be the case. So many good memories of just exploring islands, finding treasure, and a very well done story, honestly, that really, I think, outshined its predecessors, even. Anyway, guys, that's all I have to say about this game. Don't let its aesthetic deter you. If you thought, oh, maybe this isn't, for me, this is like a more of a kid-friendly Zelda, I can assure you it's not. And it's actually probably one of the more epic ones out there for sure. Anyway, guys, with that being said, I will leave you with this game and see you later. Bye.